Hey everyone, Jack McDonald from Ripple just called out the 3 major things blocking tokenization of financial assets right now. How quickly can we actually make this happen? It all comes down to solving these exact problems. And listen, there's some hot off the press stuff about SBI we need to unpack, plus what's happening with XRP. Oh, and Congress just released some fresh details on regulation that you need to hear. We'll get to that before we wrap up. Right now though, let's listen to this one.
Would you like to add on?
Yeah, I would say 2 things. One, to your first question around what are the holdbacks or the factors holding back adoption, I think there's really 3. One is comfort, which is going to come from education. And as we talked about earlier, stablecoins, by their very nature of being stable, and particularly when you look at certain stablecoins that are managed in a way, for example, how we manage ours, that we'll talk about in a moment, we're going to give great confidence to the largest institutions to use them. Second of all, regulatory clarity and tailwinds are going to encourage a lot of institutions to come out and adopt stablecoin usage. Then third, having the infrastructure in place to support that. I do think that there's a risk, and this has been suggested in part up here today, that maybe we try to put this new financial operating system on the legacy rails. And I'm concerned that that may actually hold back the potential, or we might try to do it in incremental steps and save money along the way and not actually be bold and innovative, because I do think that there's a better way. We can still work within the system. We're not trying to overthrow traditional financial systems, but I do think the opportunity with this new technology is pretty profound in terms of what we can do. Last thing I would say is that not all stablecoins are the same, and we've issued the gold standard of stablecoins, a dollar-backed stablecoin. BNY Mellon is our custodian. All of our reserves are in high-quality liquid assets. We come out of New York State. We're a fiduciary. We hold our customer assets in bankruptcy remote accounts, et cetera, et cetera. And as the legislation continues to evolve in different jurisdictions, whether it's in the EU where we'll get an EMI license, whether it's a country like Japan where we're partnering with SBI, we're walking through the front door of every regulator, and we're doing it in a regulated way, in a very compliance-first way. And I don't think that we're going to have the same sort of challenges that others are going to do to embrace the opportunity and to entice the largest institutions who want to come and get into this segment of the business by partnering with folks like Ripple.
This is pretty fascinating when you think about it, isn't it? The crypto space is packed with all kinds of different technologies and use cases, but only a handful of companies are actually getting that VIP treatment he was talking about, right? You've got SBI, BlackRock, Venex. We're talking about absolute giants in the financial world here, and they're all choosing to partner with Ripple and work with XRP. That's not random, folks. And this part really stood out to me. Now, mass adoption of tokenized and financial assets are progressing, but several interlocking barriers continue. Let me break this down real quick. So, one of the big issues here is regulatory and legal uncertainty. The single largest barrier remains regulatory fragmentation across jurisdictions. So, think about this for a second. How do we actually get the entire world on the same page with terminology and language so value can just zip across borders without friction? Like you're selling something in Japan versus selling it in Brazil, how does that get logged and tracked? We've still got to crack these problems. Now, integration with legacy systems. Here's where it gets exciting. We're watching this happen in real time with R3, Ripple, and Chainlink. They're in the trenches working on this stuff. But wait, there's another hurdle. Lack of interoperability standards. The market today is highly fragmented with numerous tokenization platforms using incompatible protocols. Yeah, that's a serious mess we're dealing with. And check this out, high cost and unclear ROI. This raises a real concern. Can these companies actually pull this off? Do they have deep enough pockets to scale up, attract the talent they need, and keep the lights on long enough to win? You know, this is honestly one of the core challenges we keep running into with crypto. There's no shortage of genius concepts floating around, but here's what happens. If you can't rally a community around your vision and the underlying tech isn't there to support it, you're essentially building castles in the air. Now, it mentions knowledge and operational gaps. Pay attention to that because it matters. And here's another piece, limited liquidity and distribution networks. Let me break this down for you in a way that'll click. So I was digging through some numbers for a totally separate video I'm putting together. Turns out this data is like the missing puzzle piece for today's discussion. What we've got on the left here shows you the sheer scale of money parked in real estate, global equities, bonds. We're talking about the full financial picture across these sectors. Now, swing your eyes to the far right in that tiny sliver. That's everything that's been tokenized up to this point. Look at these numbers. Real estate sits at $650 trillion globally, and guess how much we've tokenized? A measly 0.01%. We're talking less than $20 billion here. Global stocks, under 0.001%. Bonds, under 0.001%. See the pattern? We can't even have a proper discussion yet about tokenization progress because there's barely anything to discuss. But here's what matters. This shift is definitely coming. The people leading this space keep saying the same thing. Once the ball starts rolling, it's going to roll fast. There won't be this awkward split where half the market uses the new rails and half sticks with the old. Nope, we're heading toward one explosive flip the switch moment. Listen to this.
And how do you think this cross border payments benefit from the stablecoin integration?
Yeah, I mean, stablecoins are the killer app for global payments. I think what we've seen at Ripple, and Ripple has been in the payments business since 2012, we've seen really from the front row how stablecoins are being used increasingly. And it really has to do with the 24/7 nature of it, the ability to move value in a frictionless way. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's stronger in terms of a regulatory footprint. Again, if you are regulated like we are, it minimizes or negates a lot of the FX transactions that happen. It reduces error. There's a log in an immutable way using blockchain technology. So there's a dozen reasons why it's better, and we're already seeing the benefit of stablecoin adoption, not only in payments, but specifically within the Ripple payments. We've doubled down more recently. We've made an acquisition of a company called Rail that we announced last week, 10% of all stablecoin payment flows. It's a $183 trillion industry today, and I think a unanimous view is that stablecoins are going to be used more and more in the global payments business. And so we're excited about that. We're excited about bringing really a one-stop shop to that sort of solution for institutions who then also need better liquidity. We've got a trading and a prime brokerage business. Now you start to talk to corporate treasurers about how they're going to hold those assets, and we've got a custody business. So we think about the creation, building infrastructure to help institutions create, store, move, and exchange value around the system, and that's where we're investing from an M&A perspective, but also from a internal and organic development standpoint.
Okay. My guess is they're probably eyeing some sort of compliance company to snap up too. Look, there are definitely several other strategic moves Ripple's cooking up behind the scenes. And listen, in my view, there's not much standing in Ripple's way at this point. But once they actually secure these last few components, they're going to emerge as one of the most powerful financial institutions anywhere on Earth, especially considering how XRP's value is going to climb over the years, plus that absolutely massive 40 billion XRP stash they're holding on to. I mean, seriously, what do you think that pile's going to be worth, right? SBI Group is teaming up with Tobu Top Tours to launch prepaid tokens on the XRP ledger that can be exchanged for cash and spent like digital prepaid cars at local stores. This is significant as the market in Japan for prepaid instruments is 200 billion annually. So let me break down some extra details for you. The article's talking about SBI partnering with Tobu Top Tours. That name is seriously so fun to say, I genuinely love it. Huge because the number we're dealing with is $200 billion. Why is this positive for Ripple and XRP? Real-world use cases for the ledger. Localization drives volumes by targeting regional economic zones, including tourist destinations and sports communities. The initiative helps create sticky in-region spending, boosting transaction volumes on the XRP ledger. The piece also gets into institutional and public adoption of the XRP ledger. This partnership connects Ripple and major household brands in Japan, driving generational awareness, helping to normalize the use of XRP. That's genuinely a brilliant play, right? NFT and loyalty expansion. And then it circles back to that massive $200 billion opportunity sitting on the table. All right, let's flip the script here, folks. Time to move on to something else. CoinDesk just dropped a fresh update, and we need to talk about what's brewing with regulation over in the Senate. Listen to this.
Republicans are approaching this from a point of view as they want to move very quickly. I think Democrats would like to have some more time. They want to feel like they are part of the process, and they have their own ideas on what needs to be included. But even more than that, I do think there are a lot of senators who want to be involved that just haven't had enough time to digest the proposals that are out there, or get deep on the technology. And so there is a learning gap there. And I think, listen, the industry, I ran the Blockchain Association for 7 years before coming over to Solana Policy Institute. There's been a lot of education that's been done, but this is, as we know, an incredibly fast-moving space, and we want to be sure that these senators feel comfortable and confident about where the technology is so that they can get the legislative framework in place that works to keep the US as a leader in this technology.
Look, I'm really excited that groups like Solana and Ripple are out there with XRP doing the hard work of educating our lawmakers, the senators, the Congress members, helping them actually understand what we're dealing with here. When these people sit down to write policy, they've got to know what the real world consequences are going to be. We absolutely cannot afford to ram through legislation that kills innovation or puts the brakes on crypto growth in America. Handle this the right way, think it through properly, and honestly, everyone comes out ahead. So that's Brian Armstrong, the CEO over at Coinbase, sharing his thoughts on this crypto market structure bill. Here's what else is happening. Listen to this.
Yeah, well, we had great meetings with the Democrats in the Senate and on the Republican side today. And the good news is that there's strong bipartisan support and will to get this market structure legislation done. It's important for America, and the 50 million Americans who've used crypto want to see it get done. And so one date we heard floated was, let's try to get this markup done before Thanksgiving. I think that there's 90% of the issues are already aligned on and agreed, and there's draft text going back and forth, a lot of great cross-functional collaboration happening. That last 10% are the remaining issues, and everyone committed to get in the room together and work it out, and hopefully we'll see some draft text or get it out of committee by Thanksgiving.
Oh man, I love where this is headed. Getting something solid drafted up would be incredible. Fingers crossed we can have it ready by Thanksgiving, or hey, at least before the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve, right? But real talk, this whole thing could easily drag into 2026 if we don't sort out whatever circus is happening with the government shutdown situation. All right, pivoting over to XRP now because there's some exciting stuff happening. 5 months for XRP futures. Since launching in May, we've seen an incredible demand for this regulated product, ready for more control. Check this out. They're basically doubling down on XRP offerings. More futures contracts, different flavors of products, you name it. And listen, this is seriously good news for everyone in the industry as things scale up. We're looking at tens of billions pouring in, maybe even hundreds of billions down the road. What's that actually doing? It's pumping liquidity into the entire ecosystem, giving XRP itself way more breathing room. Bottom line, we absolutely need this kind of growth. All right, folks, I'm wrapping things up here for today.